Hey everyone, it's Shobit, and today we will be demystifying the role of product managers at the giants, at companies like Amazon, Google, and Facebook. So you don't want to miss this, so stay tuned for more. Okay, product management at the giants, demystifying the role at Google, Amazon, and Facebook. So, before we go into the specific companies, I get a lot of questions about what product management really is. What is the role? So, let's take some time to break these things down. So, ultimately, a product manager, it's a strategic and business-oriented role focusing on delivering solutions to customer and marketing needs. So, notice a few things here. It's not meant to be someone who goes and delivers features. No, it's a business-oriented role focused on delivering solutions to customer and market needs. So what does that mean? How do we think of the role of a product manager? So here I'm highly inspired by Professor Mohanbir Sani from Kellogg. And this is how he explains what a product manager is. So on one hand, you are the voice of the customer, which means you need to know what customers actually need. What do they actually want? And you can do this via quantitative methods, qualitative methods, but ultimately you're responsible for representing that customer. That's number one. The second one is that you're a general manager, which is you're going to manage the product as a business. So it doesn't matter if it meets customer needs, if it's useless to your company, if it can generate revenue, if it can generate views, if it can generate and solve the business purpose for which it was created. So you're responsible for thinking about, hey, if I was the CEO of the product and I had certain business goals to meet, how do I do that while meeting customer needs? And look, there's a lot of people that say, hey, just focus on meeting customer needs and forget about the metrics. Those will take care of themselves. That's not true. You have to have both sides in mind. And people who think that they can't do both, well, you're not really doing your job as a product manager. And then last but not least, probably the most visible part here is that you are the orchestrator, which means you are coordinating the work of everyone in your company to make sure that the product is successful. That could be your engineers, your designers, your engineering leads, your stakeholders, sales, marketing, legal, privacy, security. Basically the buck stops with you. If you did not bring the right people on board, and that's why the product was not delivered, you are the one at fault. So that's your role. You got to capture all these things. And maybe one more way to look at it is, a little bit more details. Product managers as general managers, they're often considered the CEO of the product as they're responsible for strategy, roadmap, feature definition. Again, I'm borrowing a bit from Professor Sani, who just is a master at teaching these things. Them as customer advocates and them as orchestrators. So one more way is from Ravi Mehta, who's been previously VP of product at TripAdvisor, met him in person. He's written this article called The Peak Product Manager, and really given a really great framework of how to think about the skills related to product manager. So he breaks it down a little bit differently in terms of customer insight, product strategy, product execution, and influencing people. That is its own things. And he says peak product managers don't just ship features, they deliver business impact. So another great framework to check out if you go to this particular link. What you'll find is more of a breakdown into all these things, and then also maybe certain archetypes of product managers. So I see a whole bunch of different types of product managers emerge, and Ravi did some excellent work in explaining that. Okay, so now we've learned about how to think about product management skills. Let's get into the first company we are covering. That's Google. This is one of their how they when you go to the page, every day there's a different way Google logo shows up and it's dependent on certain themes. This was one that I picked up. So there's a few very important elements when you think of Google and launching features there. So one of them is that it takes a village. What does that mean? Google's a incredibly huge company. I mean, I tell people, think of it as a country, not as a company, right? And some of the most amazing things that they've delivered over time are features that come from collaboration across very different business units. And when you think of Google, they think of it in product areas. And so there's Google Cloud, and there's probably Play or Android is its own product area. I don't know the latest. The Maps might be own product area. Search is its own area. And some of the best features come from working across. So, for example, an AR, VR feature for which might sit in a different group that really works well with Google Maps. Sundar launched this one feature a while ago where when you're doing walking directions, you can literally have a character guiding you and pointing you that, hey, there, it points to you and takes left. And so it's a collaboration between somebody who's working on augmented reality and somebody who's working on Google Maps. And so what product managers that really do well at Google, they're adept at working across these complex organizations and aligning stakeholders, aligning fellow product managers, aligning incentives across, and OKRs, which Google uses, objectives and key results, across all these areas. And so they work incredibly hard to build relationships, to inspire, to motivate, to influence. It's a core skill for you to do well there. And believe me, the results, they're worth it. They're worth all this effort that happens, because ultimately the kind of impact you can deliver, it's almost unparalleled as compared to any other company in the world. There's very few companies that work at that scale, that have that sort of reach. So a lot of work involved, but it's ultimately worth it. Which also means that if you do not like stakeholder management, you don't like influence, you don't like really advocating for your idea and be prepared to it be rejected and questioned and come back, you will not be an outstanding product manager at Google. So that's the first thing. It takes a village, and you are the one who's literally herding the village together. Now, the other thing, this is particularly, I love this part of working at Google, is because of the company, because of the economics, because of just how it works, you can afford to make long-term bets. Now, that does not mean that you lose track of the short term and you don't focus on product quality or usage or things like that. But you can afford to build and make bets which pay dividends in the long term. This is one of the things I loved working about there, because when I was working at a startup, this quarter was really the most important thing, and everything else went sort of sideways, what was important. While at Google, I could think of how would this change developers' life 3 years from now? Could we build something that changes the paradigm of how my product is viewed and the industry in which it operates? I could do things like that. And you've seen Google invest in stuff like, GPUs and TPUs and TPUs, actually, tensor processing units. Building their own hardware, that takes a lot of guts. Okay, so something like that. Or quantum computing. Oh shit, a huge bet. Or when you look at the other bets, things like Waymo and others, they take the long-term view, and that's super fulfilling working at a company like Google. And so that also means that you as a product manager, you need to be that strategist and that visionary. And sometimes, let's face facts, you don't always come up with the vision, but you are responsible for holding it, communicating it, making sure everyone understands. And if you can't think strategically, if you can't build a vision, you will not succeed. So that's another thing that's absolutely crucial, and also at the same time, absolutely fulfilling while working at Google. So the next one, it's metrics, or OKRs and metrics. You have to be obsessed by it. You have to focus on it. You have to communicate it. You have to, even when you write your performance review, you're going to put all sorts of exhibits, things that you did. I mean, you got to back stuff up by metrics, because if you didn't measure what was the impact, it didn't really matter. I mean, did it really happen if there was no change in customer usage, if there was no change in metrics? So, and related to this, there was one thing that was really popular, at least while I was at Google. And I think the company is just going down the route of making it a reality, which is think of landings and not launches. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is it's not enough to launch a new product. It's not enough to say, oh, we introduced this. We announced it at Google I/O or some huge conference. Victory, we're done. No. What it means is that you take it all the way until it achieves the desired end goals, which means it goes in the hands of customers. Customers love it. You see the impact of that on the business. So they start to celebrate landings rather than launches. And, there's still probably culture where launching a new product and, going up for promotion based on that is viewed highly. But there has been a huge shift of focusing on landings and not launches. And that's where metrics are really important, because now you're measuring not just what happens when you launched, but does the continued use go up, and whatever the right metrics are, revenue comes in, those things are focused on. And the last thing I would say here is that you must also understand how OKRs work at Google. Sorry, there's a spelling mistake on the slide. It's OKRs, Objective and Key Results. And that is one of the most ill-understood things externally. But what I've also found is that within Google, there was all sorts of lack of, inconsistencies, if you will, about how metrics and OKRs work. So it is a huge influence method because everybody has OKRs. And if you can influence what OKRs they set for themselves along with the buy-in of the leadership, that means you've changed what they will be working on the next quarter. So it's important when you work at Google to understand each other's OKRs and to work towards the right thing. And I think it's actually a beautiful system. And when it works really well. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you get too stuck in the past with what you decided without enough information. But the right organizations within Google also change OKRs when it makes sense. Okay, so that was Google. Let's talk about Amazon. So I've personally never worked at Amazon myself, although I've bought a lot of shit from Amazon. But there's so many clients that I have that are at Amazon, have gotten into Amazon, were at Amazon. So I have a lot of experiences to bank on and count on. And here are some of the things that we often coach through and hear. So number one, Amazon loves semi-autonomous teams. As in, rather than all these dependencies across teams, they would rather that each team have certain well-defined interfaces with other teams. I'm going to talk more about what that means. And then they are just able to move fast on their own while maintaining their contracts with other teams. So this is really, if we backtrack, this is the story of AWS. How AWS really got created at Amazon, and they're far ahead of, I think, companies like Microsoft and Google, who should really, if you think of them, Amazon was retail. It had no business being in Amazon Web Services, but they became the leader in web services. And that's because Jeff Bezos just said, look, from now on, all teams that interact with each other, especially through programmatic interfaces, you gotta have a very clearly well-defined interface. I'm talking in computer science terms. And that's a contract. All of you can use each other's stuff, but the contract is the interface and nothing else. And that's what you have to agree with, because I want every one of you to be able to move fast without breaking everything at Amazon. And so that created all these clear interfaces across teams, which meant that now those interfaces could also be exposed externally. And what that means is that now something like AWS can come around. So that was really an amazing thing, these interfaces and the semi-autonomous teams that allows Amazon to move fast. So speed is one of those things that is so crucial there. Okay, so that's one thing that's absolutely critical. And, I'll relate it to that is urgency. The kind of urgency you see at Amazon, I just don't, in my personal opinion, just having seen clients from Google, Facebook, Amazon, they are the ones that seem to always move the fastest, and sometimes maybe too fast, as some of my clients tell me. Sometimes maybe they haven't thought through stuff enough. Although I don't know, the jury's out on that. But they have the sense of urgency, and a result of that is also Amazon is not one place that you come to chill. It's just not the case. Everyone's working crazy hours. Everyone's delivering huge impact really, really fast. And if you're not, you're out. I mean, you're not going to survive at Amazon. They're also quick to let people go when things are just not working out. There's a lot of pressure everywhere, and it starts with Jeff Bezos and his intense personality. So that means you as a product manager should be willing to build really high value strategic stuff at a super fast pace. That's absolutely critical. And none other than Marty Kagan. I went to an event and I was chatting with him, telling him about my work. That time I was at Google, and he said, look, I see just amazing people from Google and Amazon, but they seem to be a different level of urgency and fire from the folks at Amazon. Now, it just was his observation, and I agree. Now, it doesn't mean necessarily that Amazon is better at Google or worse than Google. It's just different. So keep that in mind as you think of where do you want to be a product manager, where do you think you can succeed. And let no one tell you that you can't succeed at Amazon, that just work culture is toxic and all those things. It is fast-paced. There's high expectations. But I've also seen several people just shoot through their careers and go really fast and do really well at Amazon. But they had to understand that it was a place of them and what was expected out of there. So there is that urgency. And Amazon, the way of communication is writing. So here's the difference. For example, you're presenting a proposal, let's say at Google. You build a slide deck, you get alignment from various folks before, then you go and have this massive presentation. Then in the end, you get a decision and so on. Amazon, that doesn't work. What you have to do is you have to write a 6-page memo. Very often they follow the vision press release example. I can link more to that in the description, where literally before any work begins on any sort of product or project, you write a mock press release and a frequently asked questions. And you explain, you're sort of putting it in terms of the customer. What would be the kind of announcement we would make in the market? Because if we can't envision that, if we can't build a compelling announcement now, this product is not worth investing in. So that's the first thing, customer focused writing. But irrespective, you build a memo for any product proposals. And when people get into the meeting where this is going to be reviewed, you're not going to walk through it. For the first 15 minutes, literally people sit and read. And they read, they might provide feedback, and that's it. And then it's that's when your conversations really begin, and then it gets approved or not. So it's crucial, and the reason why it's so crucial to think of in those terms is because it's something comes from Jeff Bezos, where he said that, look, presentations, so much is dependent on the skill of the presenter and how compelling they are, how they talk. I don't want to do that. I want not to be awed by a person's presentation skills, but I want to be awed by the depth of their understanding of an issue and the way to do that is to write a 6-page memo that explains that goes into specifics. And you can't have general statements at Amazon. There's a whole recommended approach of how you should communicate. I'll also try to link to that from this video. But that is absolutely crucial. And so when people come to Amazon, they often are thrown off because their writing just gets absolutely rejected. People are like, oh shit, nobody likes my proposals. I have to go do like 50 iterations or anything. And there's an adjustment period. But you have to get used to the fact that you'll be able to think deeply, communicate that via writing, and then ultimately defend it and get the approvals done. So that's what happens in Amazon as far as writing is concerned. Okay, it's a very important writing culture. Makes sense because they start selling books first of all. But without that, you will not succeed there. Awesome. And then last but not least, workload. I mean, I just have not seen people who are working less than 8-10 hours minimum. 14-16 hours is also pretty common. Some weekends also are pretty common. So I just want to warn people that you shouldn't expect everybody to be doing that all the time, but boy, do people work hard. Okay, and then let's talk about Facebook. Okay, so last but not least, Facebook or Meta. So here's some key differences. So Facebook is known for move fast and break things, which means you're encouraged to experiment. They have a crazy audience, crazy reach, run experiments, look at the data, see what it tells us, figure out how quickly you can look at and be able to just take a hypothesis that you have, break it down into experiments, run it. They're running crazy amount of experiments on top, and they also have the infrastructure to support this, right? So there's all this infrastructure that even if some things were broken for some part of Facebook, they could quickly recover and just go on. So speed and experimentation is highly encouraged. A/B testing and data is absolute king here. And the last thing I would say for Facebook is I've definitely seen more of an engineering driven culture than other companies. And of course, it's not true everywhere, but definitely you are going to get a lot of pushback, questions and everything from engineers who do think that they know the answers to everything. And you as a product manager really have to be able to stand your ground to succeed there. Otherwise, I would say it's somewhere between Google and Amazon in terms of, there's probably a higher level of urgency, but also it's more engineering led like Google, and the ways of working are also like that, to a large extent. I mean, there's a lot of ex-Googlers who went to Facebook, and so you'll see some similarities in the culture. So that's it. That's product management at the Giant. So what I highly encourage you to do if you want to keep learning, definitely subscribe here. And then the other part is that, look, ultimately at the end of the day, if you're done learning about how things are and you want to go and actually work at these companies, I can help. I'll book a link. I'll put a link at the bottom of the video where you can both view a workshop that really helps you think about how do you go and search and go find that next role. And then also a link to talk to me or someone from my team so that we can break down exactly where things are not working for you right now, help you figure out what should be your next step, how do you get to that next level, and ultimately, if we can help you succeed, we'll absolutely offer you. And if not, no worries. This call is our gift to you to help you succeed in your career, because that's ultimately what we want for folks. Talk to you soon.